Hello everyone, Joel Tedman here from Golf Monthly and welcome to this video where I'm going to be talking you through the best wedges on the market in 2020. I've picked 7 of what I think are more of the mainstream hero models within each brand's ranges that are going to form the bulk of this test, going to give them a really thorough try here on the golf course at West Hill in a variety of situations around the greens. We've also got some launch monitor data to share with you from the Foresight Sports GC Quad. So should be a really thorough test, should give you a really clear understanding as to how each wedge performs, what options are available to you and which one might be best for your needs on your budget. The bulk of the wedges tested here are muscle back style options, but we will touch on some other options that are available in that cavity back space. So hopefully you'll find it really useful to give you a good insight into what one might be best for you and steer you into the best model for your game. So without further ado, let's begin talking about the looks of the best wedges in 2020. So first up, we're talking about the looks of these wedges, and you can see here I've got most of them in the kind of classic tour chrome satin finish. Most of them do come in different finish options to choose from. If you prefer something a little bit darker, you can go down that route, and the Mizuno ES21 naturally comes in just this dark finish, which makes it stand out from the rest. You'll see they also have more of a muscle back design, apart from the Ping Glide 3.0, which is a little bit more of a kind of cavity back style or compact cavity back style design. So they all look great. I think they've all got really good shelf appeal, but down at address there are some slight differences in the profile that you kind of see down behind the ball. The Mizuno ES21, I've got it in a slightly higher loft here, 56 degrees, compared to the others which are all in 54. But the first thing you notice about this wedge is that it's much more triangular in shape, and it does have a much thicker top line than the rest. So that's not going to suit everyone's eye. It certainly doesn't suit mine. I prefer more of a classic teardrop profile to my wedges, which is why I'm leaning towards wedges like the Vokey SM8 from Titleist and also the Callaway Jaws MD5. And one other thing, we're talking about the looks of the wedges, the wedge to really talk about here is the TaylorMade mill grind too, because this has the rusty face section. So when you peel the sticker off over time, the face section will begin to rust and it will look starkly different to the perimeter of the wedge. So while this will maintain its kind of tour chrome finish, the face will turn that rusty color, and that's something you need to think about with this particular wedge, you know, if that's something that's going to appeal to you or not, because as it gets wet over time, it will change color. And there are some performance benefits to that. I found that it's given me good feedback on my strike locations because of leaving a mark on where the ball is hitting it, and also it reduces the amount of glare you get from the sun. So there are some advantages to it, but you just got to think about whether you want your wedge to look as pristine as possible for as long as possible. Maybe that might be not right for you. But all in all, you know, some very good looking wedges here. I think if you picked any of them, they would do a great job in your bag in terms of how they look. For me, my favorite kind of profile at address, ticks all the boxes for me, is the Vokey SM8. I don't like the half bottom groove that some of these wedges have, the Ping and the Callaway. So for me, it's the Vokey SM8 that ticks the boxes the most for the looks. Right, so next up, I'm just going to touch briefly on the feel and sound of these wedges, because there were some differences that I did notice testing out on the golf course with premium golf balls. I think the first one to talk about is the Mizuno ES21. This has a semi-hollow construction, so while it's very forgiving on long shots, it doesn't quite have that super soft feel that I was expecting from the other wedges. So there's a little bit of a difference there in terms of the feel and sound. A slightly clickier sound, slightly louder. I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy it as much as the others, it's just a different sensation and impact. But because these are all pretty much muscle back style wedges apart from the Ping, they all feel really soft around the greens. There were a couple of standout performers, the Wilson and the Callaway Jaws MD5. If you want a super soft feeling wedge around the greens, those two really stood out for me, but there really wasn't much in it actually. And obviously if you're going to be choosing a wedge like this, it's geared more towards feel than it is forgiveness. There are some really good cavity back options out there that give you forgiveness without that super soft feel. So just something to bear in mind. But you know, in terms of the feel, the Wilson and the Callaway just marginally stood out above the rest. So when it comes to versatility, what I'm really talking about is, are you able to hit all the different shots that you want to with these wedges out on the course? You know, are you able to manipulate the club face in different ways whereby the sole will still interact with the ground the way you want, the leading edge still sits nice and flush to the ground? Can you open loft to play high shots? Can you shut it down to play low running shots easily? And there were some kind of standout performers within these 7 wedges that we've got here. Obviously, sole grinds are really important to the versatility, and some have more options than others. And I think the more options you have, the more versatile a wedge range is, which is why the Titleist Vokey SM8 with its 6 grinds stands out for me in terms of versatility. The Callaway Jaws MD5 has 5 sole options, so that's really good as well, and the Cleveland has 3. So those are the ones that kind of really stood out for me in terms of versatility. Vokey SM8, I love the variety and the sole shapes that you've got on these wedges. I like the D grind for chipping around the greens with my mid lofted wedge, and then I go for the K grind in my lob wedge, which gives me a little bit more forgiveness through the sand. So it's nice to have those different options available to you. Callaway similar. I like the low bounce W grind is a really good option if you want a wide sole but don't want the leading edge to be riding up too much and you like to open the face. That's a really, really good option, definitely worth trying. Ping as well. Ping have got 4 sole grinds to choose from, and they also have the I2 wedge design within the Glide 3.0, which I found to be particularly useful out of bunkers. So definitely those are the ones that really stood out for me in terms of versatility. The more options you've got, the better, and the Vokey SM8, along with the Callaway, the Cleveland and the Ping, give you those options to be able to play those different shots around the green. Okay, so moving on to the overall performance, and as I mentioned, tested some of these wedges on the Foresight Sports GC quad. I've got them all in 54 degrees, but I haven't tested the Mizuno ES21 on the launch monitor because this arrived a lot later than the others, and also it's in a slightly different loft in 56 degrees compared to the others in 54. But from the numbers that I got testing indoors using the Foresight Sports GC quad and Titleist Pro V1X golf balls, there were 2 kind of clear winners in terms of the spin that was generated on a 50-yard pitch shot and a full shot, and it was the Cleveland RTX Zip Core and the Titleist Vokey SM8. You'll notice from the numbers that are popping up on your screen now that all the wedges on that 50-yard pitch shot were around about the 6,600 RPM mark, give or take, but the Cleveland and the Titleist Vokey SM8 were a lot higher than that, especially the Titleist. It was generating much more spin on both the 50-yard pitch shot and the full shot, and that repeated itself out on the golf course here today at West Hill, testing from tight lies, especially when there's no interference from dirt or mud or moisture or grass. Noticed that the Vokey was checking up a little bit more than the others, but that said, the spin on offer from all these wedges was excellent, and it was actually fairly difficult to tell the difference in terms of the amount of spin that you experience in a real world scenario out on the golf course. But if the launch monitor is anything to go by, those are the 2 that really stood out for me. So in terms of the value for money on offer from these wedges, I've picked a couple that I think really stand out in terms of offering nice comprehensive all-round performance, but also a competitive price. It's the Cleveland RTX Zip Core and the Ping Glide 3.0. Ping Glide 3.0 comes in at £130, the Cleveland is £139. So while these aren't the cheapest wedges on test, that was the Wilson Staff model. I feel like the Wilson Staff model didn't really give me the control I was hoping for around the greens, whereas these 2 really did that. They gave me really, really nice spin, really checked up on the second bounce, and there's a nice wide range of options available with these wedges in terms of the sole grinds and the finishes, and also the performance from the rough really impressed with these models in particular. Especially testing today was a little bit wet, and I still felt like these wedges allowed me to maintain a good level of control even when I wasn't on tight lies and the ball was a little bit wet. So in terms of overall value, it was these 2 models that really stood out for me, the Ping Glide 3.0 and the Cleveland RTX Zip Core. Right, so now it's time to pick my overall favourite wedge of 2020 and beyond. It's important to note that when choosing a set of wedges, you need to feel comfortable that they are able to pull off the shots that you like to play around the greens. And as I mentioned before, the level of options in terms of the soles and the lofts and the finishes available is going to allow you to do that. And there was really one standout winner in terms of the best wedges of 2020, and it is the Vokey SM8. We talked about the level of spin on offer. This was a lot higher than the other models when we tested indoors, and because of those 6 different sole grinds, you've got real scope to choose the geometry of sole that's going to interact with the ground the way you swing it, whether it's steep or shallow into the ball, the different shots you like to play, it's going to give you a really good level of forgiveness as well. And especially on full shots, I noticed in those lower lofts, my dispersion compared to the prior generation really actually did tighten in. And compared to the rest of the wedges, I felt like this was surprisingly forgiving off centre for a muscle back style wedge. So really the Evoke SMA was kind of streets above the other models in terms of that all-round package. Yes, it comes in at a premium price, £160, but you know, I think in terms of the all-round performance on offer, there is some value to be had there, and I really enjoyed using them. One thing to point out, we mentioned how these are all muscle back style wedges pretty much, but there are some really good cavity back wedges that we've not really touched on in this video, otherwise it would take too long. But you know, things like the Callaway Mac Daddy CB, you've got the Cleveland CBX2, the Ping i2 sole, and the TaylorMade high toe Bigfoot. So those are really good options if you want something that's been a bit more forgiving on those full shots and also give you a greater margin for error on your chip shots around the green. Definitely consider switching into a more cavity back style wedge if you want a bit more forgiveness and a bit more playability. So hopefully you found this video useful in terms of understanding the differences in performance between the best wedges on the market in 2020, what they're all about and which one might be best for your game. If you are interested in diving a bit deeper into each of the wedges, do check the Golf Monthly website for individual reviews on all of these wedges. They can be found there. And do click the like button if you like what you're watching, and comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Which wedge are you most excited to try in 2020 and beyond? I'd love to hear from you. But that's all for me from West Hill Golf Club. I'll see you next time.